Hello, my sweet summer children. Welcome to another episode of my little unnamed podcast that you listen to while you walk the dog, or sew, or knit, or drive to work, or whatever it is you do to keep your hands busy while you listen. I'm your host, Bethany Mayo. Today, I'd like to get into a little bit of my family oral history with you. I think every family has its firsts. You know, the first person to graduate school, or the first person to work in a particular field. And these firsts often go unremarked by those outside the family, and often they go unremarked by those inside the family, unless you ask someone. This past summer, I learned about an incredible first in my family. Apparently, my grandmother was the first Black woman on the radio in the Midwest to have her own radio show. This is a big family first, and I had no idea about it, so I wanted to explore a little bit of that oral history with you and see what I could find out about my grandmother's time on the radio. To give you a little bit of setup, sometime in July, my dad happened to mention very casually that my grandmother, his mother, had been on the radio when she was younger. And I needed him to just full stop on that little piece of information because that was nothing that I had ever heard before. I asked him everything he could remember about it, and he told me that it was a Sunday night show called Black Awareness and that it aired in Des Moines, Iowa for a few years, somewhere about 1970. The rest, he said, I'd have to ask my grandma about. So I called her one afternoon, and I recorded the conversation so that I could really focus on listening and not be bothered by taking notes. And you're about to hear that conversation. Before you do, you need to know a few things about my grandma. First of all, she's 81, kissing on 82, so her conversation is not always direct. Her memory is okay, but it's not great, and that affects how I speak to her. When I deal with people who have memory issues, I tend to use this strategy that I call yes and. You're sort of employing the tips and tricks of improvisational strategies as you speak to people who are functioning outside of the normal memory recall that young, neurotypical, healthy people enjoy. So I don't stop to correct her when she's off track. I never tell her that she already said that. I just go with her where she is. This research was something I was exposed to, and it starts with the work of Karen Stobbe for me. She has a TED Talk that she gives with her husband about memory loss and improv. She was on This American Life, and she also wrote a book called In the Moment, and you can find more about her work with improvisation strategies and memory loss on her website at karenstobbe.com. From me, you'll hear a lot of paraverbal encouragement as my grandma's talking, a lot of a lot of yes, a lot of uh-huh, to let her know that I'm with her. And there are a few places where she does repeat herself. However, these repetitions frequently lead to a new piece of information, and I think that it has value, and this is the conversation we had, and I'm sharing it with you. Next, she's really a woman of her age in some of the language that she chooses to use. So at one point of the conversation, she uses the word mulatto, which is a very heavily fraught word for a person of mixed heritage applied sometimes positively and sometimes derisively to a person with both Black and white parents. You can find this word coming up in usage in connection to slavery and enslaved persons, and its use carries forward through my grandmother's time, and eventually it's supplanted with words like mixed race, mixed heritage, dual heritage, all of those more appropriate words. But mulatto is by no means an acceptable word by the current cultural standards, and so even though she's using it very casually, and people of her age may choose to use it very casually because at the time that was the word for that thing, it's not a word that we can use now outside of a very specific set of contextual circumstances. So I don't want to get any emails or tweets or texts about the using of the word mulatto. Don't do it. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just giving you a little bit of context. Read the word. Which brings me to my next topic. She speaks very frankly, but in somewhat vague terms when she talks about the racism she experienced in her workplaces. She tells some stories and she names some names. It is what it is. I left all those names in. I guess email me about it if you're mad. She is the oral history queen of my paternal line. And she's been featured on Des Moines local television station, KCCI, for this gigantic family tree she used to have on her apartment wall. The tree goes back almost 400 years, full 8 generations. She's also been working on an autobiographical book that she called Half Breeds Hell. She's been writing this book for as long as I can remember. And in there, I'm sure there are more stories of the things that she went through as a young mixed-race woman growing up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But she's never let me read it. And I don't know why for sure. I can only suspect. So I suspect that there are some frightening, alarming instances of racism and white supremacist behavior that she had to endure, and that's nothing that she was really prepared to share with her young granddaughter at the time. So, where we're going to come into the conversation, she is just telling me about having decided she wanted to work in radio. She gets her best stuff on, and she goes down to the radio station KIOA, is greeted by the receptionist, and is taken into a meeting with the station manager. And that's where we're going to pick this up.
And so she said, we'll wait a few minutes, I'll go in and see if he has time to see you. And turned out, Bethany, that this woman was my worst enemy.
Oh, no.
That's when I found out that white women can't stand the competition. They can't take it. They can't take it. They get sick and everything else if they run into a black female that's giving them some competition. So, anyway, yeah, that's how that went. So Mr. Marcellin looked at me and he said, you don't sound black. And I said, yes, I realize that. I said, but it's not that I'm trying to sound white. I said, my mother is white, and some of the characteristics that I have, including speech, come from my mom. So he said, when can you start? Can you start Monday? I said, yes, I can start Monday. Yes. And I've been at it ever since until I got too old.
So what year did you start? What year did you start?
Year?
Yeah.
68, I believe. Yeah.
And how long were you on the air?
I was quite a while because I started at KIOA. I did on-the-scene coverage of the news, and then I worked my way up to news director, and that's when the SH hit the fan. Because now I have moved over into the white folks' world.
Okay.
And gave me some problems. Oh, goodness. Yeah, white girls don't like competition.
Yeah.
I mean, with looks, professions, anything else, clothes. They don't like competition. So they get sick and carry on. Yeah. Do you remember me going with some guy named Gil?
I do remember Gil. Yeah. Well, I remember Dad talking about Gil.
He taught me a lot because he was on the upper echelon of where blacks were, and very wealthy. And he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about white women because he lived in their world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he used to talk to me about that all the time. About how the competition was going to be really bad. And I was going to run into some problems because of my hair and my skin color and other stuff. And I did. I surely did. So, anyway, that's that. That's that. Yes, I did. That man told me, said, can you start Monday?
So then after you worked at KIOA, did you go to another radio station?
I did.
Where'd you go?
I did. I went over to KSO, and they had me doing my own talk show.
Yeah, that's what Dad was talking about. The black awareness is what he said.
Absolutely, yes.
And he said you had a way that you would introduce the show and then a way that you would close the show, and it was the same.
Oh, yeah, and I named it Rap Out.
Yes!
Yes, Yeah, I sure did. I did the first Rap Out. Next thing I know, everybody was doing a Rap Out.
Do you remember? This is so cool for me. I'm so excited about this. This is so fun for me to know about you.
Oh my goodness!
I'm so impressed. Do you remember the Rap Out? Do you remember what it was?
I can probably remember some of it.
Okay.
It says that time has come around, and my time has come around, and I must put the records on the shelf and dismiss myself. That's what I wrote. I did it every night.
Wow.
Next thing I know, everybody was doing a Rap Out. Everybody.
Wow.
From here all through Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing a Rap Out.
That's amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. I called KIOA, but they don't have like a historian or archivist. So I've been trying to find if I could find if someone somewhere has a copy of your show.
Oh.
So I could hear it.
Oh, okay. Well, you probably need to call the station. And I tell you what you're going to run into that will be a problem.
Okay.
That station was an AM station, AM, FM.
Uh-huh.
Then it went to, what did it go to? It went to Country Western.
Oh, okay.
And yes, and I think that it remains there. Country Western, it went into that. And it'd be hard pressed to find. So the disc jockeys that I worked with was they were very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And the main one's name was Dick Young, and he died. So finding somebody from back then would be very difficult.
Okay.
I don't have enough information even to help you.
Sure.
The receptionist's name was Jan,
Okay.
with Jan, and she was so jealous of me she couldn't. But then the disc jockeys are ornery. They would do stuff to her and say things to her that would make her dislike me, you know. So,
I see.
yeah, they would. They tell her, oh, shut up, you just answer the phone here. Velma does the news.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's feisty. So.
Oh, it is.
Wow.
Oh, she said it set me up for there to always be a conflict between me and her.
Mm-hmm.
And it got so bad that she was telling my boss that I wasn't at home sick this day. She saw me out to Target shopping. And she'd go tell that. And then she said one time that I turned the coffee urn on in the break room and that great big giant urn of coffee poured down into the carpet. She told him I did that.
Wow.
And just, yeah, that's stuff you gotta run into. Fight your way through that crap in order to try to get up.
Yeah.
And it wore me down, Bethany.
I bet.
It did. I got tired of fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, thank God for my mom and dad. They made me look like I look. They're the ones that caused me to talk the way I talked. And I had a ball living life and looking just like I looked. I embraced the fact that we were mulatto people. And, yeah, I enjoyed it. I have enjoyed that.
So KSO is where you had your evening show.
Oh, that's KIOA because I couldn't take the pressure.
Okay.
Nobody prepared me for the snags I went into and had to put up with. So I quit. I quit KIOA and I went to KSO and radio, and they're the ones that put me on my own talk show.
I see.
They did that.
Okay.
KSO.
KSO, and that was Sunday night, right? Sunday nights.
That was on Sunday night. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I had people chasing me home from the radio station because I got off at midnight.
Oh my gosh.
I shut my show down at midnight, got off the air at midnight, and there was folks trying to catch me between the radio station and home so they could hurt me.
Yeah.
So I had a police escort home from my job. Yeah.
Yeah, Dad said that sometimes his grandpa would take you over there and pick you up sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes he would. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Look, I'm on a mission. I'm going to see if I can find a recording of this show. There's got to be one somewhere.
Yeah, well, you might want to start with radio station KSO.
Okay.
And a little bit of information that might help you would be the name of my show. It was called Black Awareness. I came on at the midnight show, what it is.
So you would go off the air at midnight. So did you go on at 11 or 10?
At 11.
At 11. Okay, so you had an hour. Cool. This is the coolest. I'm excited about this. I don't. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find anything. Now, I remember maybe it was at Aunt Tanya's. There was a newspaper article that you were in. There's a picture of you and a picture of Aunt Tanya. She always talked about the wig. She had on a wig that she didn't like.
Yeah, it was an article on the working mother.
Okay.
And it featured me, and I was the main feature, but it did feature other moms that worked.
Okay.
Yeah. The other moms that worked.
That's
so
really cool.
There was 2 or 3 of us, but yeah, so that was a headline.
Okay.
For me. Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can find a copy of that. I'll search around for a little while, and then I'll let you know what I can find.
I got a copy of it. In fact, I got a copy that's laminated too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think your Uncle Chunky has it, or Tanya, one or the other.
Yeah.
It's in my doctor papers, yep.
Okay.
It won't be too hard for you to get hold of.
Okay.
You could also write to Omaha World Herald and ask them for a copy.
Okay.
Black and White Make More Than Gray. That's the name of it where it was published. So
That's so cool.
yeah. So,
Do you remember around what year it was that you wrote that article?
68.
68?
Yeah, 1968. Yeah.
And what year was the article about the working mom? Was that in the Des Moines Register?
It was, and there's I got a copy of that, because that featured Chauncey, me going to school with Chauncey.
Uh-huh.
And the Register and Tribune was there at the school doing a feature article on the children's schoolwork in Chauncey's class.
Uh-huh.
So there's a picture of him and me together at school, and he's pointing to the blackboard and some of his work that's up there, that the teacher put up there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the way that went.
Okay. That's so
It was exciting.
Yeah.
And one of them glamour jobs.
Yes.
It was a glamour job, yeah. That's the history on my broadcasting.
That's amazing. Well, I don't want to hold you all day. I just wanted to call and talk to you a little bit about it and see what I could find, and I'll look around and call around, and then I'll call you back. It might take a couple weeks for me to find anything. With all the libraries are closed, and so it might.
That's the truth.
Yeah, it might take a minute to find something. So after this conversation concluded, I had about 1 million questions. I had seen the article in the Des Moines Register that she mentioned, with my aunt and my dad, and they're all gathered around the radio equipment. But I wasn't able to locate it on any kind of microfiche. I attempted to locate her license or her call sign, but I could only find what looked like the general call sign status for the radio station KSO. I did find the path that she mentioned about KSO's history. It did switch from a talk radio to a country station, and it made some other journeys as it was bought and sold a few times. Another issue I ran into about the records is with the DJs. There's plenty of information about DJs and on-mic staff, particularly men, but there is almost no mention of female staff. So I started with DesMoinesBroadcasting.com, since it claims to have a fairly comprehensive history of the Des Moines broadcasting system, both television and radio, since its inception. But women's contributions generally in history are often overlooked, And specifically in this area, I can say that I found the same thing. Not only are women's contributions frequently overlooked, but a Black woman in the 70s would have been twice overlooked. My grandmother is fair, and she did inherit her polished voice, we're going to call that. But what really is happening is that she's code switching. That's the term that we're using now. But at the time, and even when I was growing up, it was really common for white people to tell me that I spoke so well, or that I could talk really nicely, for whatever that's worth. So I think that's a little bit funny that that's something that she experienced in 1970, and that's something that I experienced in the 90s when I was growing up and socializing about. Her fair skin and polished voice were enough to get her on the radio to start with, but she was and is, after all, a Black woman, and thus kind of subject to the dismissal that one might expect of that time and geographic location. More challenges? Any tape from that era that survives would be reel to reel, so even if I did find a recording, I might not have a way to play it. I went through all the traditional routes that I could manage through the internet via my keyboard and phone calls, and I couldn't get very far, so I decided to reach out to a college in town, Drake University, and their alumni association, looking for anyone who would have been at the university during the time her show was on the air, sometime between 1970 and 1975. But, this drama of pandemic life, I haven't been able to hear back from them. And I don't know if that's because no one in their alumni association is that old, or if no one has anything to share. I'm really unclear. And so that's something that I'm continuing to monitor. But with all the libraries closed and archives closed around the country, it's really hard to know what to look for. This kind of research is absolutely not my thing, and I'm a bit stuck as to what to do next. Do I need a fact checker? Do I need an archivist? Do I need some other kind of researcher? And even if I can't find a recording of her show, I'd love to speak to someone who was a listener. So here's my plea. If you were living in Des Moines between about 1970 and 1975, and you listened to a show on the radio called Black Awareness on Sunday nights on a station called KSO from 11 to 12, then I want to hear from you. Please, please, please drop me a line on Twitter. My handle is B_G_quilting, or you can find me on Facebook at Bethany Mayo, or you can email me at browngirlcreating.com. Please, please, please help me find some information. Help me find your recording. I really want to celebrate her accomplishment. And I need help to do it, and that help is going to come from you guys. So, big thank you to Velma Turner, my grandmother, our guest for today. And the link for the video where she appears on KCCI will be available in the description box. That book she's writing, Half Breed's Hell, I'll be sure to let you know when it's published. Also, continued thanks to Scientific Uppercut, who does all the music for the podcast. You can listen to them wherever music streams. Join me next time for whatever it is I'll be talking about. When I know, I'll be sure to let you know. The burning question: will I ever name this podcast? I hope so. But until that time, my dears, be brilliant.